Hi. Nice to see you. Oh, no, we can't see you. You can see us. Is it nice to see us?
Nice to see you, Ruth.
Nice to see you, Danielle.
Welcome again.
If you're joining us, make sure you drop a comment in the comment box on whatever page you're viewing us on. We're on my business page, Danielle's business page, and our YouTube channel, all at once, simulcast.
Mm-hmm.
Technology is amazing. So drop us a comment. Let us know where you're from. Again, we always give the disclaimer that most of our advice is local to our market, to our area. But if you have questions about a place outside of that area, we can help you too. We just don't want you to think that anything we're saying here might apply in, say, California, because probably nothing we say applies in California.
Especially today. Today's topic is, I believe, even more specific to this area in some regards. Some of it is pretty universal, but. So this week's topic is inspections and getting prepped for inspections. And this is kind of based for sellers, things that they can do ahead of time to try to minimize what they'll find on an inspection report, but it's also for buyers to understand when they see things like this, it's not the end of the world. It's very normal. I think people would get upset if they pay several $100s for an inspector to go, good. You know, so sometimes it gets a little like, put some caulk around this or whatever, and you're like, okay. But it's still worth noting. And so they do note it, but it's not necessarily worth asking for.
Right. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about the evolution of inspections, which Danielle, I think you were in on some of it, but you're a little younger than I am. So I think that anybody who hasn't bought or sold a house in many years is going to have a different impression of what an inspection is or ought to be. And they've changed quite a bit over the last 15 years. So before the crash, really, inspections were just kind of a buyer beware. You would get your uncle, who's a contractor, to come over and take a look around and let you know if you saw anything that made you want to run for the hills, and then you might cancel the contract based on that. Most of the time, little, if anything, was asked for from the seller. The crash changed all of that. The crash created a couple of things. One was a whole lot of distressed properties. And then in the middle, there were a whole lot of neglected properties where people were underwater, didn't have the money to do maintenance, but maybe were not underwater. They weren't in a short sale or foreclosure position, but they weren't in a position to spend any money on the house. And also an extreme buyer's market. So buyers had all of the power.
Absolutely.
So buyers started bringing inspectors in, and there was a meme several years ago that said, doorbell's broken, better ask for new carpeting, a jacuzzi tub, and the basement refinished. And that was not that far off of what
right. The entire electrical must be redone because the doorbell didn't ring.
So buyers were asking for everything under the sun. Now we're in a rather extreme seller's market, and buyers are back to asking for not a whole lot. In some cases, the offer is as is, and in some cases, even waiving inspections, which we don't typically recommend unless you are a contractor. But for the most part, in the middle, you're going to get a handful of health and safety issues that a buyer is going to want to ask a seller to remedy before they purchase the house.
And, Ruth and I, our favorite thing to reference is as far as for inspections is paragraph 12. Paragraph 12 is something that was added in the last contract upgrade that we had, probably, was it 3 years ago at this point? 2 to 3 years ago.
And that is specifically for our Chicagoland market.
Correct. It is yes, exactly. We have a paragraph 12 that talks about that inspections will be limited to, inspections can cover everything, but requests through that is supposed to be based off of safety only. Now, safety only is a little
bit nebulous, yeah.
Yes, it is a little vague. And so, some people might see a broken seal on a window and say, it could create mold, it could do this, it could do 1,000 things, and now they want new windows. But I think for the most part, that has been tampered down by that paragraph. And I, as a buyer's agent, try to explain to my clients that that is the expectation, to keep it there. And I also try to talk to, when I'm representing the sellers, talk to the buyer's agents that are coming in saying, I want you to confirm that you understand this inspection is not going to go south because you're asking for random things, that you understand that paragraph 12 is what we are working with right here.
Yeah, when you walked up to the house and you saw that the sidewalk was like this, and now you're going to say it's a tripping hazard and you need a new sidewalk because that's a safety issue, no. We're moving on to another buyer.
That goes into what you're offering. In the value you see in the house.
Anything you can see, really, you understand that the sellers could also see, and that should just be part of your offer.
Mm-hmm.
Inspections are really for the things that you can't see, and that would have changed, your thoughts about buying the house. I always like to say to buyers, you're going to walk away with 3 lists. The first list hopefully is empty. That's deal breakers. That's things that are either so expensive or even if they were fixed, the house is tilting because of a structural issue. And even if they repair that structural issue, you might not want to live in a house where marbles all go to one corner of the room. But the second list is those few things that we feel it's appropriate to ask a seller for. Again, the more competition on the buy side, the fewer things are on that list. That seller can walk away and get another buyer.
Correct.
Just asking for something can make the seller go do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third list is the longest list. That's your to-do list. Welcome to homeownership.
Correct. Yes. Yay, because if you have the seller do too much, they might decide that they like their house.
Yeah. Exactly. But there are a few things as a seller that you can anticipate coming up and you can check out and get ahead of. Some people advocate doing a pre-inspection. That's an option. Some people don't want to spend the money. It's usually not as much as a regular inspection. Most inspectors will do a kind of an abbreviated version for less. But it's important to know that anything that's discovered has to be either fixed or disclosed. So as long as the seller is okay with that, they can go ahead and spend a couple $100 and get a pre-inspection and then have a pretty good idea of what any inspector is going to look at. I'll tell you again, though, all inspectors are going to see something different, and each buyer is going to have something different that's important to them. So a buyer may have had a bad experience in the past, and they want to make sure that's not going to happen. They may know somebody who had a bad experience with, say, a sewer system. I had somebody, we don't typically inspect them, but I had a buyer. I've had 2 buyers who had, one had a previous experience and one knew of someone with the previous experience and did the sewer scopes. One of those came up with a problem, which was surprising to all of us. But so some of it's going to go on, be based on the buyer's experience and fears and sensibilities.
So we've come up with a list that we have seen over the years come up on almost everything. There's a few that come up on almost everything, and they're very easy, quick fixes with a couple extra minutes time. And then there's other things that we want to kind of point out that if you see it, and it's probably best just to get it out of the way to prep. So the first thing is GFI/GFCI. So people use that interchangeably. What it is a ground fault circuit interrupter. So the C is sometimes there, sometimes not. So Basically, you will find this in kitchens, bathrooms, and exterior outlets. And it's just a grounding. It's just a grounding to, when it's around water, it shuts off real fast. They go bad. They don't get used often. You can, and you don't know because the outlet will still work. It's the matter of the tripping mechanism. So there are easy little handheld things that you can get at the local hardware store that you can put in, and it'll tell you if it's grounding correctly or not. If it's working.
And most of them have the little tester too, so you can test to see if it pops.
Correct. Make sure there is one as well. So there has to be that is something though that has changed over the years of what the standards were, how many they have to go in. Nowadays there is a mechanism where there's one in the room or one in the area, and all of the other ones also are connected to it. You have to know the difference in that. But changing those out in the kitchen, the bathrooms, and the ones I usually see kitchen, but I also often see outside, because those are some that rarely get used at all over the years. So that's almost always one of those that needs it. So for, I don't know, $100 or whatever, depending on the size of your house, you can have those all changed out and ready to go, because those are on most inspection reports, because that's something they will not forget to do, is check all of those. Another real quick, easy item is your smoke detectors. When was the last time you changed your smoke detector? Is it a slightly different color than it was when you bought it? Those are all indications. If you can't tell me, you're like, I think it's been, I think rule of thumb for inspectors is 5 years. I know that the technology is getting there, that some of these, the ones that I most recently purchased you didn't even have a battery. It was an automatic thing, and when it died, it died. And that was considered time to replace. So I'm not sure if all inspectors are on that wavelength yet. But it's something that it's not just inspectors finding it, and this is what I should have probably said. It's also appraisers. Appraisers will look for this. They will test them. So if it doesn't,
FHA, I don't know if have you had non-FHA appraisers test smoke alarms?
You're probably right.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much FHA is going to look for some specific things. So even if you don't ask for them or get them asked for in the first round of inspections,
correct,
the FHA or VA inspector is going to look specifically for a few items. And if you just take care of them ahead of time, you know that that's not going to be a problem.
But you know what, appraisers, there's often times where appraisers will just go ahead and do an FHA appraisal, just in case something happens in the end and the conventional loan has to switch over to an FHA.
So it's always a good idea to take care of these little things one way or another. GFCIs, the smoke detectors, and CO. And now you can get combination alarms.
Yes.
So each municipality can sometimes have slightly different rules about where those need to be. But generally inside each bedroom for the smoke detectors, and outside within a certain number of feet of bedrooms for the CO.
Don't quote us on that. We are
not. So if you've got bedrooms at the opposite ends of a long hallway, you probably want two. And then one on each floor for the CO.
They do have plugins. So if you do have relatively new fire detectors in the rooms and hallways and whatever, that would be a good, you could probably just kill two birds with one stone, but get a couple of them again.
Yeah, they've got the combo ones. I like the combo ones because then you don't have to do two everywhere. But CO has to be on each floor. So one in the basement, one in the main floor, and one upstairs. And then fire should also be on each floor.
Correct. In addition to by the bedrooms. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, so those are the three that I see on almost every single inspection that comes through. Then there's, and you know, it's a couple $100 all in, but it saves a lot, because if people, you know, I don't think people are walking because of smoke detectors. but it is something people can notice. It's just another thing. You know, if it's part of a laundry list, it might just be part of something that in the end they go, I don't want to deal with this anymore. So these are little things to just kind of help. So the other ones are kind of preemptive, and it kind of depends, you know, but I think that HVAC is another system that usually gets a ding because it is health. You know, you have the health and the safety, you have, you know, potential for carbon monoxide to come out, which is why you want each on each floor, because wherever these big systems are, you need to make sure that, you know, it's doing what it needs to do. So getting an HVAC person, and quite honestly, even if you know it's working well, everything looks great, just having it cleaned.
Yeah.
If an inspector goes in there, when a client, when a potential buyer looks in there, if they happen to look in there, if it's dusty, if it doesn't look, if somebody pulls, and in the second vein, also change out your filters. But if they pull the filter and it looks like it hasn't been changed in years, if it looks like it's all dusty inside and nobody's touched it, it's going to give a little bit more of a red flag than a nice, pristine, well-running looking HVAC system.
Yeah. Also, it gets ahead of the complaint that it's old. So paragraph 12 specifically says that it doesn't matter how old the mechanical item is. If it works, and that's all you get. If the furnace has a lifespan of 15 years and it's 80 years old and it's chugging away, that's your furnace. But if the buyer tries that and they say, well, the inspector said that it was at the end of its useful life, even though they're not supposed to, being able to present them with a recent cleaning and certification from an HVAC professional makes all that go away.
Correct. Yes. And would save, you know, potentially several hundred, because they might say, come in, you know, they want you to have somebody come out and possibly do more work. Oh, well, we think this is wrong. Well, you know, no.
Yeah.
So yes, please. And then there are a couple other items that are, again, more FHA specific, but you don't know the buyers that are coming in. And again, to make the process just go smoother, we might as well get the house up to the best standards, right? You know, whenever you're trying to sell a house, even in a seller's market, I'm so sick of people going, you don't have to do anything. Yes, you do. If you want the deal to keep heading, you know, going forward.
Yeah.
So chipping paint is a big thing on FHA. You cannot have the FHA chipping paint. And it doesn't matter if your house is built after lead paint is no longer in it. They just don't want to see it. So one of the biggest areas I usually see deterioration is on the first, you know, when you're walking in, the main door often has some sort of wood or painted area. That would be, just for presenting to potential buyers, I always, you know, say, why don't we kind of take an extra look at this area. So I think that giving a fresh coat of paint around there, kind of scraping off what needs to be done. And windows, you know, windowsills, those usually have a lot of paint that tends to, you know, just the water comes off the windows and kind of starts to deteriorate the paint around there. So I would do a quick run around the house. Interior, of course, you can have chipping paint as well, but the idea is that as a seller, hopefully, you know, every couple of years you're painting and whatever, 10 years, I don't even care how often, but, you know, usually you're not seeing too much chipping paint, but be on the lookout, maybe around bathrooms, you know, by the tub / shower.
Sometimes it's always where lots of moisture has collected.
Correct. Double check that. See what you can sand. See what you can kind of do a fresh coat of paint for. And this is not the same as sealing. Sealing seals. Sealing ceilings. I need to write that out.
Yeah.
But you'll see paint. You know, you'll see the paint tape sometimes coming off. That's not necessary. I mean, try to just to have it look nicer. But as far as that's
the drywall tape, yeah.
Right. I usually see it on the ceilings, but sometimes I see it down the walls too. But that's not the same. We're really talking about where it's been worn out. again, older homes where you might have more of a wood frame inside and outside, that's kind of where you'll see a lot of, the chipping paint.
Yeah, and we had it recently on a property my buyers were purchasing where it's on the eaves under the gutters.
Right. Yeah, I've had that once too. The one time I had an FHA ding paint was that right at the top. Mm-hmm. Couldn't see it. Homeowners thought they've done everything, and
so as a buyer, look for that too. So you'll know if you have an FHA loan, you'll know that that's something that you're going to put on that list to ask the sellers to take care of.
Correct. Yes. And then lastly, for FHA, something is handrails. So is it 2 or 3?
It's not a lot. It's
I think it's beyond 2 steps, and then I'm thinking steps. So you got the base, 2 steps, and then the platform. If there is more than, I believe, 2 or 3 steps, you have to have a handrail. So exterior and
it has to be a graspable handrail.
Yeah, it can't just be.
It can't just be the wall, and it can't be some designs were made with really wide handrails, like in the 70s. That was the thing, like the Brady Bunch house. So they're like 6 inches wide. That actually, unless you can get a grip on it, it doesn't count. I've had that happen.
That's interesting. So you have to make kind of an extra handrail.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. And then the last thing that I wanted to hit as far as inspection goes for buyers and sellers is radon. Radon's huge around here in the Midwest. It is a gas that is second leading cause of lung cancer. It is becoming more and more prevalent as far as people's awareness about it. And so people are testing for it more. Now, houses starting, I want to say mid-2000s, so 2004, 2005, 2006, those, a lot of those houses were built with passive radon systems, which means that the duct work is there, or the PVC work is there, but it doesn't necessarily mean it has an active fan system that gets the radon out. So just be aware that both.
Sorry, Danielle, we should just quickly explain that it's a pretty simple system that's just a long tube and a fan that blows the air from under the house out into the atmosphere, and that mitigates the radon inside the house.
So they break into the concrete, basically, and get it up and out, depending on where it is. Sometimes I've seen it in crawl spaces that are unfinished, but so it's a system. We have a great company that we can help both buyers and sellers with, but it's a 2-day test. More and more buyers are getting it done. It is, I think that last week was the first radon inspection that I have been part of for the last 2 years that didn't have a high test. And also a seller pre-testing doesn't guarantee that next time that the buyers come in and test that it won't be high. That's a weird thing about this radon. There's a lot of stipulations, and maybe we'll make a whole nother presentation on this.
Yeah, we should. I mean, our advice really as far as radon goes is just get the system. The tests are something, but they are not in 2 days. It is not. It's not a reliable negative.
Correct.
And the state of Illinois says that the number 4 is actionable, and that's where if it's over 4, that's where we typically ask the seller to take care of the remediation. However, nobody says that there's a number that's safe. So everybody really in our area should have a radon system. We still recommend buyers get the tests because then the seller will pay for it. But even if it comes up under 4, we would recommend that you get a test. So then call Radon Express and they'll not a test, I mean a system. they will put the system in for you and you'll be safe from it. The good news is that the system takes care of the problem. So,
and it has a monitor on it.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, I don't know if you can solely go off of that, but it does.
It just shows that it's working.
Okay. But you can look at it. There is some sort of gauge on it. But yeah, I think that
it just shows that the liquid is, I don't know, the liquid's not even. That's all I know. Maybe Rebecca from Radon Express will, weigh in here for us and give us some better information than we have. Yeah, it's an issue that everyone should take seriously. I do hear people who say, radon. We didn't have radon when I was a kid. I'm like, you rode around in the back of a pickup truck backwards with your feet hanging out too,
eating the
smoked cigarettes in the front. Right. Well, what's your point, right?
Right.
So it is dangerous. It's serious. Everyone should really have a system.
Yes. So those are our big 6 or 7 ways to kind of be prepped for an inspection for your home, and be aware as a buyer of common things. And it's not a bad thing, but it's common. So just things to take note of, things that you could probably expect to see on a radon or on an inspection report. So hopefully this is helpful. And we're taking next Friday off. So it will be 2 weeks until our next
church on Friday, right?
Good Friday.
Doing the stations, yes.
I love the station. Sorry, I used to love them.
Me too.
Isn't it at 3 o'clock though?
Yeah, but we have to get ready. Anyway, we're not doing it next week.
All right.
So you could watch this again though.
There you go.
Information.
Yes, we're having too much fun here.
We are,
guys. Enjoy it too. All right.
Thank you. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.